The United Nations is as effective as the sum of countries, because the United Nations governance system is every nation of the in the world, frankly. And even if you then look at the strongest ones, the ones on the Security Council, the ones with the greatest influence, what happens is basically, in many areas, what they are willing to support, and that illustrates, you know, the drama of the system we made in 1945, which hasn't basically been changed. Now, but the United Nations system has a normative consequence. It does create changes of opinion. It spreads knowledge. It shares knowledge. It has a moral voice. And all of this can be used to improve situations. But it doesn't have an authoritative power to pursue the norms, except through the Security Council. So generally speaking, I mean, there are exceptions to what I'm saying. But there are sanctions in certain agreements. But in those agreements, countries have agreed to have these sanctions presented in the framework of the convention. But in most cases, some country or some countries have refused to get into any kind of sanction, which means the agreement is dependent on each country's willingness to honor its obligations. So that's the limit of the system. But I am convinced that we will have an improved multilateral system within the next 30 years, gradually having more sanctions and incentives and disincentives directly into the body of the agreements. Because that's the only way to create a socially and environmentally acceptable and economically viable world.